And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved it so much that you wanted to come back for more. Folks, that was a brilliant decision because we have a lot more for you. Why do we have so much for you? Because this is the podcast. It's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And our guest today is, wait for it, among other things, a podcaster. And he's a lot of other things. I tell you, I was reviewing his bio before we got going today, and this guy has his hands in a lot of stuff. He's got a lot of things going on. I can't wait to have him tell you all about it. Folks, this is the place where we rise each other up. This is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So let's get rolling. Let's get sailing. Let's bring in our guest today. Author, host, meditation teacher, happiness coach, and recovering lawyer, which I can't wait to hear about. Please welcome to the show, Bob Martin. Bob, how you doing today, brother?
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's nice to talk to podcasters, talking about podcasting, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about me. I mean, after all, most of us are prone to want to talk about ourselves, but we really do need to think about our guests. So I appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. And that is the idea. Take the folks who are sitting in the host chair, doing for others all the time and give them a chance to talk about what they're doing. So I'm glad you're here. Before we get rolling with all these things that we get to talk about, let everybody know a little bit more about who is Bob Martin, what your story is. And my goodness, what in the world does recovering lawyer mean?
Yeah, so I think it's an appropriate designation, but let me go back and start a whole generation back because it really kind of starts there. Um, and there's a spiritual, side to the story, and so I need to let you know that my dad was Hungarian royalty. He was born in 1898 and fled Hungary when the Bolsheviks invaded after World War One, the communists, and came to America through Ellis Island. He's a typical immigrant story. Matter of fact, that's what my new novel really follows. Um, and found popcorn to be his means to get to the American dream. He was walking with my mom, who's Roma Gypsy. And all of my dad's ancestors were wiped out by the Bolsheviks. All of my mom's ancestors were wiped out by the Nazis. And they came to an opinion that there wasn't really a God that was worth worshiping. So I just say that because part of the story is to know that I grew up without any kind of religious background.
Hmm.
And my dad was a good and fastidious man, and he was a great role model. But there was just, I never went to any churches or anything like that, and I didn't have that as part of my life. But I say that uh, just it'll click in later. The Yeah, he found popcorn. They had saved up $600, and they were walking in downtown Manhattan, looking for how they were going to make their way. And he saw a sign on a store that said, "The great new taste sensation from the Midwest, popped corn." He went in and put a couple of pennies down and turned to my mom in his Hungarian accent, like Bela Lugosi, Dracula. He goes, "These, these I can sell. There is nobody that would not like this." And so they spent their $600 on a popcorn machine and got rolling. And
Wow.
so I grew up um, in a carnival, actually, for the first 9 years, traveling. We traveled to Mexico, came back, and I never in a million years thought that I was going to wind up to be a lawyer. Uh, I grew up in the carnival, then amusement parks, and my biggest ambition in life really was to sell enough hot dogs in the summer to not have to work in the winter.
That works when
um,
you're young. I mean, you can do that kind
uh-huh.
of thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, you hope.
Yeah.
But I had a friend, and those were the days of Nixon and Watergate and Vietnam and Cambodia and the like. And I was pretty hot to trot about arguing and advocating. And I had a friend that kept telling me I should be a lawyer. And I just wanted to sell enough hot dogs to not have to work in the winter. So one day my friend disappears and he comes back a few weeks later with a postal money order made out to the Educational Testing Service for $350, which was the entrance fee to the law school aptitude test. I couldn't cash it. He said, "You should be a lawyer. Go take the test." So I did. One law school that hadn't even been accredited yet took a chance on me. So, and they luckily they were accredited by the time I graduated. And so I became a lawyer. And one of the things that really changed in my life is we were sitting around the first year students. Of course, there weren't any second or third year students because we were the first class of this unaccredited law school. And sitting around asking each other, like, what kind of a lawyer do you want to be? And I had no idea. I just wanted to sell hot dogs. And I said, I want to be a judge. I didn't know anything. And the moment I said that, this kind of thing like settled over me, which said, wow, you really might turn out to be something. You might be in a position to really make a difference in this crazy world. Remember, these were coming out of the 70s. So, hippies and all that. So I might be able to make a difference. Wow, all of a sudden it settled on me. So I got a job in my third year of law school for Janet Reno in the prosecutor's office in Miami. And I interned in a felony division, and I had two felony trials under my belt as an intern.
Wow.
Lost both of them, but I did that, and then I was hired into the office as a felony assistant district attorney, and rose up quickly through the office and got to be the head of economic crimes and consumer frauds. And there's this civil action called RICO. Maybe you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organization. So we went after the mob. We never could get enough for a criminal charge, but we could get enough to get their money. And we hit them for 70 million.
Whoa.
Um,
Wow.
and about then, I decided to go off on my own, left the office. And within 2 weeks, uh, Johnny, I'll call him Johnny, Giovanni, walks in my office. I knew who he was. Walks straight into my office, right past my secretary, sits down in front of me, scared the bejesus out of me, and finally looks at me and says, you hit us for a lot of money. I go, yes, sir. He goes, we got good lawyers and you beat them. Yes, sir. Says, we'd like to send you some clients. So I started out within 2 weeks of my private practice representing runners and mules and all the lower echelon people that never the upper. It wasn't like I was consigliere or anything like that. I was just
Right.
getting people were walking into my office with $9,000 in cash. Never 10,000 because you have to report $10,000 in cash to the
Right.
feds. So it was always under $10,000.
Gotcha.
And I was hanging out with these guys, and it was the cocaine cowboy days. There was a lot of cocaine around, and my behaviors became excessive. I'll put it that way. And I was staying out till late, leaving my house early, wasn't spending any time with my family. Everything personal was falling apart, so I was seeing a therapist. And I was spending money as fast as I was making it by investing in all these schemes and stuff. I mean, Miami was crazy in those days. It was after the Mariel boat lift, and crime was like at a high peak, and it was nuts. And there were all these scams, and new restaurants opening up, and new this and new that. So
Yeah.
I had paid my house off and had gotten myself into some financial jams, and I might have had to remortgage my house. And I went and I asked my therapist, well, George, should I do this? Should I refinance the house? And I expected him to say something like, well, Bob, what do you think you should do? like most therapists, But instead, he picked up a few coins. He shook them in his hands, dropped them on the table, looked at the heads and the tails, made some mathematical computations. He did it 6 times, drew a little figure on a piece of paper. I'm thinking, what the is going on here? And he comes up with a number. He opens up a book, and it's that chapter. And he shows me the chapter title, and the chapter title is Retreat. So I cursed him out, thinking that he'd turned into a shaman or something, and stomped out. But I couldn't get that word out of my consciousness. So I started pulling back from some of those excessive behaviors and went back to see him. And I said, George, what did you do? What was that? And he says, well, Bob, that was the I Ching, or is it properly pronounced the I Ching? I said, what's that? He said, it's a Taoist practice. I said, what's Taoism? He goes, well, it turns out that my therapist was the English language editor and devotee and one of the primary students of a 72nd generation Taoist Grand Master from the Shaolin Temple, the Kung Fu Temple, Master Hua-Ching Ni. And so I started studying Taoism. I'd never, again, like I say, I'd never had any kind of religious background. I'd never been provided with any kind of system of virtue. And Taoism is not a God based philosophy. So it wasn't asking me to believe in any kind of supernatural beings, but yet it was laying out and gave me a blueprint, an operating manual for how to live life effectively and efficiently and virtuously. And Master Nee came to Miami the next week. And the moment I met him, it was like, phew, I need to know what this guy knows. I mean, he just had a presence. He giggled all the time. He was always smiling, except when he wanted to really relay something important. And one of those times was when we asked him why they call him Master Nee. And he giggled and he said, well, because I have mastered life. And we said, no, no, you can't get away that easy. What does it mean to master life? And he said, when you can interfere with the natural flow of things the least and expend the minimal amount of energy and still get the desired result, you have begun to master life.
Wow. Hmm. You got to think about that
So
one for a minute.
50 years later, I'm still unpacking that.
Yeah.
But what the teaching is simply this. If you're out in the water and you want to get into shore, there'd be 3 ways to do it. One, you could swim like heck, panic, and drown. Two, you could just say, I got to get there and just expend all your energy and go and swim in, and you'll get to shore, but you'll be exhausted. Or you can say, I noticed that sometimes the tide is going in the direction I want to go into, and sometimes it's going against it. So let me expend the energy that's effective when it's going toward shore. And when it's going against shore, I need to reserve and conserve my energy, not allow myself to be thrown back out, but stay there. And then when the energy shifts again, swim like heck, and then hold, and then swim like heck, and then hold. And this way I'll get to shore without expending my energy, and I will be capable and available for something else. And if you can live your life by understanding the flow of the energy around you and then learning how to align yourself with that energy, that is an effective and efficient life. And so I studied under Master Ni and I learned how to do that for 8 years. I studied under Master Ni. And of course, that was transformational.
Wow.
And that led, of course, to meditation, being trained as a teacher, and that kind of thing.
Okay. Everything you just said, that's a lot to unpack. You're not even joking.
That's a lot to unpack.
Both of those, I mean, that's a big concept, first of all.
Hmm.
But to live your life that way means so many other things. There's so many branches that come off
Uh-huh.
that.
Yeah, there.
Understanding where the energy is flowing.
And
How
that's
can
why
you tell it, right? I mean,
that's why the tagline of my podcast is to go with the flow. First, you have to understand the flow.
haha. Okay, all right. The
You know, if
podcast
you're
is
if you're in a raft
yeah.
and the river is calm, then you can be laid back and paddle gently. But if it turns into white water, you have to treat it differently. If it's going to go over a waterfall, there are other steps that you need to take. And then when the river is calm, you have a chance to recover and renew.
Hmm. Okay, I got it. So the idea is not to go against the flow and waste your energy, so that when you are going with the flow, you end up being stagnant because you spent
Right,
all your energy going against it. So
right.
again, in concept, I get it, and
Hmm.
then the practical application of that has to be intense in terms of how
Well,
to figure that out.
yeah, but there is a practice.
Okay.
Remember, I told you about my therapist throwing the coins on the table?
Yeah.
So there is a Taoist practice called the I Ching. Well, okay, it's spelled I, so you say I, and then Ching. So most people say I Ching, but it's really pronounced I Jing.
Okay.
But anyway, the I Ching breaks the flow down into 64 different slices of the pie, and each one of those 64 into six subslices.
Okay. I mean,
Okay.
the math already knocked me into my second cup of
Right.
coffee, so I'm kind
So,
of like,
for
okay.
example, there is a time to retreat. And I was doing a podcast, and somebody asked me, "Well, does that mean giving up?" And I said, "No. If you study the time to retreat, you'll understand that the time to retreat comes before the time to give up. If you retreat at the right time, you can regroup. If you miss the time to retreat, then you'll be demolished."
Got it. That makes
So,
sense
right? So there's a time to retreat, there's a time to wait, there's a time to move forward, there's a time to punch through, there's a time to calculate, there's a time to plan, there's a time to, just like the Bible says, for everything there is a time unto heaven, a time to reap, a time to sow.
for sure.
It's just that expanded into the detail. And you say, well, how do you learn all that? There is a practice that if you spend 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll learn a little piece of it. There's a way to throw the coins, in effect, and it gives you a random reading. And then you take that random reading and you look at how it applies during the day. Then tomorrow you get another random reading and you look at how it applies. And over time, you come to be able to embody or understand or integrate those 64 periods so that as you're going through life, you go, oh, nobody's listening to me. Well, then I guess I should, be quiet. This is not the time for me to move forward. This is a time for me to wait. You begin to integrate that, and your little antenna starts to vibrate and tell you, notice the energy. Maybe you need to pull back. Maybe you need to go forward. And if you look at people who practice Tai Chi, they're always going forward and coming back. This is a physical way of feeling the energy,
Hmm. Okay.
because
Yeah.
energy is always either going forward or pulling back a little bit. It's yin or yang. And that's what yin or yang means. Yin or yang, didn't mean to get into this so much, but yin or yang, you
Right.
notice that here in yang, there's the dot of yin.
Okay.
And in yin, there's a dot of yang. Well, it's not a dot, it's a seed. And yin will take over yang, and yang will take over yin. which is a symbol of day turns to night, night turns to day, summer turns to winter, and all of life is cyclical, even good times and bad times. Good times will, in your life, good times have always not lasted. Bad times have always not lasted. So the way to deal with bad times is to be patient and wait till the energy changes before you expend too much energy. The way to deal with good times is to not think it's going to last forever and prepare for when things go down. So this
All
is
right.
just a manual for how to live life.
Now, Bob, is this something that you are teaching now?
Well, it is the background of, I mean, I've also been trained as a meditation teacher. So in my meditation classes, we deal with a lot of human struggle, human struggle and human joy and the like. And so having a philosophy of life that backs up the kinds of things that my students experience in learning meditation is very helpful.
Hmm. Okay, that's interesting. All right. And I know we introduced you as a meditation teacher. Um, the all right,
Hmm.
so that's what you're teaching. You've got a fairly unique way of teaching this, right? That you and I were talking about beforehand.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Well, most people, if they want to learn meditation, either read books, which are very, very helpful as far as theory goes, or they get an app. But there's no accountability with an app. Most people who get apps, they use them for a while and then kind of fade away. Or they go and get a teacher, but that's very expensive.
Hmm.
And also with just a teacher, the problem is that let's say you can afford to meet with them once a
All right. Hey, sorry we lost you for just a second, Bob, but we got you back, brother. And you were just in the middle of telling us about
Yeah,
your
yeah,
meditation
yeah.
practice with the app. Absolutely. Go for
But
it, bro.
right. So like I said, most folks either get an app and there's no accountability to an app, and then or they get a teacher, but they that can be very expensive, and your lessons are stretched out between a week at a time or a month at a time, and so the progress is very slow. What I have access to, which is so amazing, the folks at Duke University were real concerned about the stress level of the students at Duke. And so, four departments, counseling and medical and psychology and research, got together. Say, how can we find a mechanism for teaching our students a way to reduce their stress levels? So, they came up with a way of teaching meditation that includes an entire digital infrastructure. So when a student signs on with me, they get an app that was created at Duke, which as a certified Koru teacher, I have access to. And I will teach them, say, breath awareness, body scan, and maybe eating meditation or walking meditation on this week. They'll go home and practice it. And on the app that they get as part of the course, those guided meditations are on the app, as well as all the other information that they may need. It's just as like any other app. But when they do their 10 minutes of practice, and I ask my students to practice 10 minutes a day, so their time commitment is 1.5 hours a week with me and 10 minutes a day in practice, a log window comes up on the app and they get to reflect on how that 10 minutes was for them. They might say, oh, this was terrible. I didn't even meditate. There was a dog barking and it really pissed me off. And then all of a sudden the bell came up and that was the end of it. And it was horrible and it was no good. I didn't meditate. So that comes to my dashboard. And I get up at 4 o'clock every morning and I get all of my students' logs. And I sit there and I respond to those logs. So for that log, I might say something, whoa, whoa. First of all, you notice what it feels like to be distracted. You notice what it feels like to be annoyed. you noticed that there was a sense of time compression because you said all of a sudden the bell rang. So, I mean, look at all the stuff that you noticed about how you respond to things. So, all that's great information. Yeah, you've never looked at it like it's information before, but let's look at it that way. So, we'll build on that. And so every day there is this dialogue going on between me and the students. And every day there's little tweaks. And every day for 5 weeks, that's, 5 times 7 is 35 sessions that they get, 35 communications. And so by the end of the 5 weeks, they know what meditation is, they understand it. And they can make a decision about whether or not it's a practice they want to engage in, or maybe it's not for them. Maybe this isn't the time,
Nice.
either way. But most of
Nice.
my students who finish the course, I hear from them way later. They say that it was life changing.
Nice. Nice. All right. I mean, that's a multi-pronged approach. It's fairly unique. So
Hmm.
it's very, very cool. All right. Um, Interesting. The monthly mindfulness meetup then is part
Hmm.
of this, in addition to this,
Yeah.
part of
Well,
your
so
coaching. Yeah, tell us about it.
if my students take the course, then, this is someplace they can drop into every month. There may be people that have never taken the course that are just curious and have questions. And a lot of times my students are there, they can answer those questions. And that's a really cool dialogue that goes on. But it's just a drop in space where people can come and have their questions answered. And also, it, helps to continue to motivate. And, if you get away from a conversation for too long, it kind of fades.
Gotcha. All right. The Now, where can folks get information on the app, the monthly wellness meeting, that type of thing? I mean, we're not signing off yet. We got too much more to talk about, but
Right.
just in
Right.
case they're already wondering, they're like, "Wait a minute, where do I
Hmm.
look this up?" Go ahead and just tell them right now.
Yeah, everything's on my web page. It's at awiseandhappylife.com.
Awesome. All right. And then folks who want to like know a little bit more about you before they maybe dive into the teaching, you've written two books. You got a third one on
Hmm.
the way. Just give
Hmm.
them an idea of what those are.
Well, growing up without religion makes you very curious about religion.
Sure.
And my first one, which was written a few years after 9/11, was in noticing that it's a novel, and I was noticing that so many people are running around killing in the name of God. And I was thinking that, if God is up there and if he thinks like we do and if he speaks English, then he might be thinking, yeah, not exactly what I intended. So, what would happen? It was a thought experience. What would happen if God could make himself known or herself or itself known? So I created these 7 characters, all which have a flaw consistent with the 7 deadly sins: sloth, jealousy, the like.
Right.
I created these 7 characters and a whole world, and God starts leaving messages on the little ticker on the bottom of your TV screen. Things like, "You're all my children, God. I created a paradise for you. Don't blow it, God." So messages from God start appearing all over the world, and everybody thinks it's a hoax to begin with, and the whole book really asks the questions: what kinds of flaws are redeemable? And even if this were true, would we listen anyway? Or are we so stuck in our human arrogance that we wouldn't listen even if the man himself were to tell us? So that's
Interesting.
the question of the book.
Interesting
The other
take.
book is has a cute little story to it. So you already know I grew up without any kind of religion, became a Taoist. Later, when I came to, I should mention that at one point, after studying with Master Ni for a while, my relationship with my mob clients changed because we had a very good agreement that I wouldn't do anything unethical or illegal because it was in their best interest to have a lawyer that was trusted by the courts. And they agreed, and it was all good. But then Johnny's son in law got arrested on a 15-year mandatory sentence felony. And then it was, no, you'll do what I tell you to do. And it was, no, I won't. And then it was, hey, Johnny, I'm moving to North Carolina. And he agreed that sometimes a man just needs to move on.
Wow.
So
There's a
I moved,
whole other episode right there. But
a whole nother episode. So I moved to North Carolina and I moved from doing homicides to prosecuting folks for killing antlerless deers. It's a crime to kill a deer with no antlers
all right.
because it's a doe deer. Does you can't kill does.
Yeah.
Um, so so I moved to a rural town in North Carolina, and it was a whole thing. But I started attending Buddhist temples and became conversant in meditation. Then they came and they asked me to undergo this very rigorous 2 year course of training. Anyway, I was no longer the man that my first wife married,
Got it.
and we had to renegotiate our vows. That's a very nice way of saying we got divorced.
I figured.
But I met my current wife 25 years ago, and she is a Bible literalist, now recovering Southern Baptist.
Oh wow.
So she is a saint in every aspect, and we completely meld with our virtues in our values. But I mean, she thought all my stuff was just totally weird, and I couldn't buy her science. The world's 4,000 years old, etc. So we just were kind of apart on our cosmologies. So the main seminal book, I wouldn't call it a Bible, but the main book of teachings of Taoism is called the Tao Te Ching, which means the classical book of the way of virtue. Tao itself means the way, which is interesting because Jesus said, I am the way. Was he saying, I am the Tao? I don't know. But anyway, I was listening, to her talking about her faith in Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, and I go, there's not a hairbreadth of difference here. So when she would tell me something, I would look in the Tao Te Ching and I would find the teaching that was identical. And I said, I wonder if I could somehow, I'm a writer and I could fancy myself as a poet. I said, I wonder if I can take this kind of pithy Chinese way, this Confucius say way of writing, and reimagine it in Christian terminology so that it maps on for her. And so I took a couple of the chapters, they're only one-page chapters, and rewrote them using Christian terms. And it was a bit of a challenge because, again, Taoism isn't God based and Christianity is. So you have to move from energy to personality. But I showed her a couple and she goes, wow, this is really good stuff. Where'd you get this? And then I show her the origin of it and she goes, oh, your stuff's not that weird. And
That's
so
what we all want to hear from our wives, right there.
it's not that weird. So I started another chapter, another chapter. Finally, I got all the 81 chapters reimagined, and word got out, and it got to the ears of a publisher who contacted me and said, we want to publish the book.
Wow.
And so it's out, and the most gratifying thing for me is that I get letters from all around the country from people who say, I left the church because of its exclusivity. It's my way or the highway. I could never buy the hell, fire, and brimstone for all eternity, and I left the church and I didn't realize that I left my relationship with the divine. And your book has given me a way of reestablishing that relationship.
Hmm.
So
Nice.
it does my heart a lot of good.
I'll bet. I'll bet. And you've got that wasn't enough for you though, because you have a third one coming.
I have a third one coming.
Just give
Yeah.
everybody a little quick, what's it
So
called?
my dad was born in 1898, as I mentioned, and his is the typical immigrant story. And he had built up an empire, and it was stolen by the mob, and then he came back and he built it up again. So it's the typical, hero's journey, like the Odyssey or the Iliad. It's a typical hero's journey with a cheerleader, a mentor, an adversary. It's got all the elements in it. So I've fictionalized his life, and I'm writing it as a novel, a
Nice.
novel that you would say a sweeping historical novel of family conflict.
All right. Already writing the promo for the book
Yeah,
that's
right.
not out yet. I love that. Do we have a date on when that's coming out? Any idea?
I've got the first draft
Wow.
finished, and it's coming in at like 68,000 words. And for that genre, I gotta, they're looking for 90,000 words. So my job right now is to go back and say, where can I, give a little bit more here, give a little bit more there.
Gotcha.
So I would say I'll be done in a couple of months.
Excellent.
And
That's aggressive from
I already
first
have a
draft.
publisher interested in it.
Yeah.
So
Excellent. That's beautiful. Well, congratulations on all that.
thank you.
The podcast we haven't talked a lot about, but there's a reason
Hmm.
for that, and that's
Yeah.
because you've released a couple of episodes, but you're launching this
Hmm.
podcast. So I mean, you're fairly new to podcasting. All right.
Yep.
That is launching on the 1st of September, right, of this year. Okay.
Right.
And so give everybody an idea. It's called a Wise and Happy Life podcast. So let's give
Hmm.
everybody an intro. This episode that we're doing right now is going to come out after that date. So, folks, if
Hmm.
you're hearing this, you can go find the podcast. It will be out. All right, that's what we're being told, and I think we can believe this guy. All right, he's been a mob lawyer. I don't think you get there and get to live to tell the tale without being a man of your word. So, here we go. So that's going to be out. It's called A Wise and Happy Life podcast. Give everybody an idea. What is this about? What's your goal with it, and why? Why'd you choose a podcast for it?
Hmm. Well, the tagline is in order to go with the flow, you have to understand the flow.
Okay.
And it's not just a happy podcast or happiness, it's a wise and happy podcast because it is important to understand the workings of all of the systems around you that you're involved in so that you can understand the flow better. So, I mean, there are a lot of things you can do to increase your base level of happiness, like you could keep a gratitude journal. Write down a couple of things that you're grateful for every day. You can, at the end of the day, write down three good things. And so all of that stuff is available and it's out there, and there's hundreds of life coaches and the like. But I'm more interested in the podcast, in the why and the how behind the techniques. Why does it work? How does your brain, what about what you're doing in your brain, and what is the physical component that's happening to you when you meditate? Why do we ask you to begin again and do repetitive things? As far as the systems that are around you, does education really work? What about homeschooling? What about all of these things? So we have a lot of folks who are wellness oriented, nurses, and people who talk about digesting the physical body, but we also want to talk about the spiritual body. We want to talk about the mental body, and we talk about how we fit into the systems around us. And so we try to help to demystify a lot of the systemics that are around us so that we can more wisely align ourselves, with the flow of the energy around us. So it's called a wise and happy life. If we don't understand the
Nice.
flow, how can we align ourselves with it?
Got it. So it's educational, but it's also about making everything understandable and relatable and
Hmm.
connectable to the people that are out there listening.
Hmm.
Okay, I
Like we
like that.
could have
Interesting.
we might have one episode on gut health
Okay.
and and we'll get into like, well, what is gut health and why is it and what are the microbiomes and what is all that stuff? And then another one, might be on whether or not the media is actually trustworthy.
Okay. That's simple.
Everybody
No,
says
but yeah.
that's a big one, right?
Right. Yeah.
But a lot of people throw the baby out with the bathwater and they say, I can't trust any media. Is that true? I don't know, but let's have a conversation about it so that you can determine that for yourself.
Right.
So it's going to be as wide ranging as that, all with information to help you live a wise and happy life.
Interesting. All right, wonderful. I'm looking forward to seeing what this looks like. I always ask a corny question on my show,
Okay.
and it's about the podcast. Now you're brand new in podcasting. You're getting ready to launch, but you've recorded a bunch of episodes already,
Hmm.
right? Okay,
Yes.
so about how many? 20, 30, something like that?
I think we've got 21 in the bucket.
Okay, so you've been doing this for a minute. I mean, this
Hmm.
isn't like you just grabbed the headphones. So
Right, right.
you can definitely answer my corny question. So when it comes to doing the podcast, all right, what is it that you love the most about doing the podcast, even at this young age? And what is it about doing the podcast that, man, you just really hate the most?
Um, the what I love about doing the podcast is meeting these incredible people. I mean, I have had 21 conversations with people that have made me laugh. They've made me concerned. They have taught me things. There was stuff I didn't know. And it's just, they're just great folks. I just love meeting them and talking to them and learning from them and having the sensation that I'm helping them put out their wisdom so that it can help other folks. So that's what I love about it. I can sit up here for hours, and
Right.
the two things, the two things that I hate about it is I ask anybody that's going to come on the show after looking at their information and researching them if they'll sit for a 15-minute pre-interview. And some people just aren't right for the show. And you have to say, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I hate doing that. I just hate doing that. And the other thing that I hate about it is there is a lot of logistics. You got
Yeah.
schedule stuff. You have to have a calendar. You have to put people on for the pre-interview. You have to understand the system. And then there's the editing. And I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes work. I'd say probably for every hour of podcasting, there's probably 3 to 4 hours behind it or more. What would
Right.
you say? What do you think?
I think that they're part of, well, when I started out, it was definitely that way.
Uh-huh.
So, 600 plus episodes later, I've gotten that down quite a bit, but
Right.
you're not joking. And people don't understand that
Mm-hmm.
when they get into podcasting because they really think it's what we're doing right now. They think
Right.
this is podcasting. So I,
Right.
I I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that nobody gets until they start hosting. So
Mm-hmm.
good for you that you recognize that though, and you're already going, man. How am I gonna pare down all these time wasters? So
Yeah, yeah. Well,
that's wonderful.
can I mention one of the services that's out there?
Of course, absolutely.
Okay. Well, Podmatch.
Oh yeah,
Those guys, those guys are just incredible because not only do they bring you great guests and help you to match both being a guest and a host, but they've also worked out all the workflows. Like they actually give you, as part of being a host on there, they give you a whole workflow that's already a template that says first do this and then contact them about that and send them a thank you letter and do this and do that. And it's just like a checklist, and you can get your team involved in it, and it's all part of their very, very minimal fee. Now,
yep,
I just think those guys are top notch.
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that because I love Podmatch. I pump them all the time. So
Hmm.
Alex is an incredible guy. He and his wife have built a magnificent service. So
Hmm.
that nobody saw coming,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it already changed the industry. So I'm with you 100% on that. All right, excellent answer to that question. So the podcast itself. as you have been putting it together, it's mostly interview. Are you going to be doing solo episodes too, putting out your opinions of things and your take on certain subjects?
I believe I will. There's some things like the I Ching, the I
Hmm.
Ching, which I would love just to do a podcast on, but I could, I mean, I can certainly do some episodes where I'm guiding a meditation. Like I just wrote a really, I think, of course, I think I wrote it, so I think it's really great. Uh,
That's
but
okay.
a compassion a compassion meditation, which basically, has the repetitive words of things like, just like me, this person wanted to be happy. Just like me, this person had struggles in life. So that we under the idea of getting our spirit over into somebody else and being able to recognize the commonalities that there are between people.
Mhm.
And when we repeat phrases like that over and over, there's things that happen in neural pathways that are created in our brain that make our ability to be compassionate more easy, more normal, more like that's who I am.
Yeah.
And so that's what meditation really does. So I might put out episodes just talking about a compassion meditation, guiding one. I could do that. But if I was going to do something teaching how the I Ching works, I would much rather have somebody on that I'm in conversation with about it. So it might be not a guest, but a shill, as what we used to say in the amusement parks. You have a
Yeah.
shill. You know what a shill is? A shill is a guy who comes up to the game who can do it super easy, but nobody knows that he's connected to you. And
Right.
he comes up and he's got to throw the three balls in the basket, and he does it. And you give him the big, stuffed toy, and he has walks away, and everybody thinks it's so easy. And then you get all the customers and then rip them off of their money. That was the carnival business. But
I love it.
maybe
Absolutely.
maybe that was a bad example.
Not at all. I mean, I think people absolutely understand where you're coming from on that. We've all gone to the carnival and knowing we're getting ripped off.
Right.
So,
But in this
but
case,
you
and
still
I'll
do it.
just have
So,
somebody on that asks me the questions that
yeah,
bring out the teaching. It would be easier than just lecturing.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. One of the best parts about podcasting, brother, is that there are no rules.
Hmm.
So you can do whatever it is you want to do on your show, which is absolutely great. This is the Wild West out here, so welcome, and
Hmm.
hope you really enjoy it. So we are literally making the rules as we go, and that's one of the best parts about the industry. So
Mm.
hey, if you think that's
It
a
is
good idea,
lovely.
try it. Put the shill up there and see how it works, man. Send me a message and let me know. I want to make sure I catch that
Yeah.
episode. You know what I mean?
Right, right, right.
Perfect. I love it. As I mean, we're kind of hitting our time here, but I love your story. I love where you've come from and what you're doing and why. Really looking forward to the release of the podcast as we kind of pull this together, wrap things up to close. Even though you're brand new, and even though you've only done a few episodes, I mean 20 something is not really a few though. You've done enough to get going. Even in your short time, I'm sure you've learned a couple of things about
Hmm.
podcasting. For instance,
Hmm.
hey, there's an awful lot of work to it. But
Hmm.
so right now, and then when I have you back on in a couple of years when you're huge, then we can compare this answer, right? What what's your best piece of advice to podcasters who are just starting out, going through what you're going through, to get launched and to get going?
Love your guest.
Wow. Okay.
Love your guest. So what does that, I mean, what does that look like practically?
Mhm.
Um, if you love your wife, you're going to know her well enough so that when you're walking by a store and you see a dress that you know that she would love, you're going to pop in and get that and surprise her with it because you love her and you know her. So if you love your guest, you're going to find out about them. You're going to want to know about them. You're going to look at what they do. You might even, if they have a free downloadable thing, go ahead and, I mean, you can't spend an inordinate amount of time doing research, but you need to love them. And then when you have your first contact with them, you just want to tell them, why you asked them to be on as a guest and what it is about them that fascinates you, and give them that confidence that and also reveal enough of your stuff so that they understand the listening that they're talking into.
Hmm.
Because if they don't know that I studied under Master Ni, if that's relevant in this one, they don't know that I have a background in Eastern thinking. They may shy away from talking about that, whereas if they brought it up and they knew about it, then we would have even a more fascinating conversation because they would inspire me to engage more. So they need to know a little bit about who you are. And don't be afraid to interrupt, because a lot of times they just want to go on and on and on and tell you about me, 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 me. And when you sense that it's gone on long enough, stop and throw a question in. You know,
I hear you.
so those are the things that I'm kind of picking up on.
I love it. I love it. Great advice. And I love that you've learned that stuff as you're moving forward already. That's fantastic. So, all right. How can everybody reach you just in general? How can they find your free downloadable stuff? How can they find your app? Give everybody all your stuff.
Okay, so yeah, Wise and Happy Life podcast. There is a section there to tell you all about the courses. There is a place to register for the mindfulness meetup. You do have to register for it, and then we'll send you a reminder. There is a section there, a menu tab for free resources, and I've written a couple of guides that
Yeah.
are like, what is meditation and is it for me? 25 different ways to reduce stress. And I have over 300 different particular instruction sheets and self evaluation guides. Like, am I happy with my career? How to do a loving kindness meditation, how to do breath awareness, how to do walking meditation, you know, um, how can I evaluate, what are the strengths of my relationships? All things like that. There's over 300 of them. They're all
Wow.
downloadable, all free.
Nice. Wonderful. All right. And the app is available now?
No, the app
Not yet?
is proprietary. It
I
is a
see.
part of the course.
Gotcha.
You can think of the app as being a very, very sophisticated walkie-talkie.
Okay.
Okay, that allows us to communicate with each other on a daily basis.
Got it. All right. Love that. I missed
Mhm.
that. I'm glad I asked that question. So, all right. Wonderful. Bob, thank you so much for everything that you've brought to the show today. Fantastic story. Can't wait to hear your podcast and looking forward to the book coming out. Martin's Corner, I think you told me
Mhm.
was the title. Beautiful.
Mhm.
Honestly, you're a great guest, and thank you for coming on the show today, man. It's been a
Rory,
lot of
thank
fun.
you so much for having me, and I just so appreciate what you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Folks, this has been another awesome episode of the Podcaster Nation. The reason we get these fantastic, powerful podcasters and guests on here is because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. Folks, this is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.